According to Tom Rainer, the majority of Protestant churches in America average 10 or less salvations a year. Let's change the stat.
Welcome to GoCast, a podcast designed to inspire and equip pastors and leaders to lead soul-winning churches. We have a mission to go and make disciples. This is GoCast.
Hey everyone, welcome to GoCast. I'm your host, Kelly Stickle, and I'm joined today by a special co-host, the other Tribble. This is Jen Tribble. This
Hi.
is Tim's wife, and today we're going to be we have you on here because we are doing a great conversation with Pastor Dave Meyers from Royal Oak, easy for me to say, Victory Church in Calgary, Alberta. And Pastor Dave is really involved in the community. They've really turned Royal Oak into a community church. And you are a big part of doing that for our church in our community. You run My City Care, which is basically, instead of expecting the community to come to our church, we're taking the church to the community. So you want to give a brief overview of what My City Care is?
Yeah, for sure. My City Care is kind of the activation of our church within our community. And so we have different initiatives we do throughout the year that basically build bridges into our community and connect our communities to hope.
That's so good. And it's modeled after what Jesus did. I mean, Jesus really went and met needs first. And then before he preached, he often went and felt needs and helped, healed the sick. And fed the hungry and did these kind of things, which is what My City Care does, which is what Pastor Dave Meyers is really doing with Royal Oak, is he's opened up his church. Instead of just being, a church service on a Sunday, he's got daycares in there, he's doing community events, it's turned it into a community center, and he's really served the community. Well, surprise, surprise, that's had an impact on people meeting Jesus in that community because they've made that connection first. So has My City Care made an impact? Is there on anybody in the community that we've seen a connection between the help and meeting Jesus?
Absolutely. One of the things that we've talked about several times as a church is, would a community miss us if we were gone? And I feel that over the last couple of years, we've only been doing My City Care for about 4 years now.
Yeah.
I think we've definitely made massive inroads into the community with different initiatives like Night to Shine. We've partnered with the community for our Christmas Hope campaign, which is a citywide initiative that basically meets the needs of toys and food for the community for Christmas. And that's been a really successful collaboration between us and the city.
So good. And we have seen individuals come in that we've given food hampers to, or that we've met in some of these these events that we put on and helped, who have come in, gave their life to Jesus, and then brought their entire family in. And they got saved, and it's pretty cool. So it's really important to connect the church to the community, not just be a church in the community, but really be the church. And Pastor Dave is great at it, and we will love you to hear this conversation that I have with Pastor Dave Meyers of Royal Oak Victory Church and how to impact your community. Let's take a listen. Well, hi, Dave. Welcome to GoCast. It's so great to have you on the program, and man, it's so good to get to chat this way.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity, and always a great topic that we're going to be looking at. So,
so tell us a little bit about yourself and our audience about you and how you got started in ministry. You've had quite the journey, and so fill us in with where God has led you.
Well, I'll give you the Coles Notes, because that whole journey could take a long time. I never raised a Christian. I never went to church, but when I was 21 years of age, I heard the gospel, came to Christ. It was a radical transformation for me. Started going to church. From there, I went into Bible college and then into the ministry, and it's been a bit of a whirlwind, but served as an associate pastor in a large charismatic church here in Calgary for 5 years. Then went out to the Maritimes, planted a church there, came back, joined Victory Churches, and took over the mother church that Pastor George and Hazel Hill planted here in the city, and I've been here now, my wife and I, for 22 years.
Wow. The 22 years has flown by. That's crazy. So tell us a little bit about Royal Oak Victory Church. You guys just went through phase 3, just completed phase 3 of your building project. But tell us about the last 22 years and about the church and where you're at now.
Yeah, well, when we took over the church, it had been in existence for 6 years. Pastor George and Hazel had planted it and pastored it. We came in as associates. We served for 1 year, and then we took the church as lead pastors. It was in a community center at the time. The morale was pretty low. The goal was to always get our own building. And so we had many false starts, many disappointments. But we were able to find a piece of land in the northwest part of the city, just a little less than 3 acres.
Yeah.
And we purchased it. A year later, we built what we call phase 1. Which could hold about 220 people. Kind of disappointed. We scaled back the original project, but because of finances.
Yeah.
But we ended up filling it, and then we went to 2 services, and then within 5 years, we built phase 2, which was really our bigger auditorium, which could seat about 450. And we filled that, went to 2 services. And then just a year and a half ago, we broke ground to do what we call phase 3, and we just completed that in June.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful, beautiful facility. Now you pastor in Calgary. It's a large city, but you've really focused and have for as long as I can remember, your reach once you moved into Royal Oak, you really focused on the Royal Oak community surrounding your church. Tell us your thinking behind that strategy.
Well, to be honest, it began with, I guess I hate to say it, but maybe a little selfish motivation. We purchased the land, which was easy.
Yeah. But
anytime you go to build a building, it can be a little bit challenging, depending on how the community responds.
Yeah.
You have that not in my backyard. And we had experienced a little bit of that as far as other areas go. So when we went to go see the community association with our blueprints in hand, one of the things we told them right off the bat is that this facility could always be used by the association and the community. And if it was a community association event, we would not charge any money. They could use it for free.
Right.
Now, that was part of our sales pitch, I guess you could say. But of course, we did declare it, and we have lived with that right from the get-go. So right from the beginning, our focus was to be a blessing to the community. The community of Royal Oak Rocky Ridge has no community center, and they never have had plans to build one.
Wow.
So we thought, we could be the community center, and that's sort of how it started and kind of developed.
And it's been really effective strategy for reaching into that. You've had a lot of people from the community then begin attending the church because they've come through community events or been in the building.
Oh yeah, and so there are so many community events, all the way from condo association meetings to the Red Cross blood donor clinic. Meet here 6 times a year. Just a whole list of things that go on in the building.
Yeah,
it's community related, and of course, people come in the building, they look around, they get curious, and some of them end up checking us out on Sunday.
That's cool. Now, you also do a major function every year. I think it's in June, right? The Family Fun Day, where you have it's just you turn the whole facility into this big party for families and for kids and all that. You have thousands of people coming out to that event. So tell us about the event and the effect it's had on the church.
Yeah, and so we started that event, surprisingly enough, in Varsity. Varsity was where we rented the community association.
Yeah.
So we started this event called Family Fun Day. And when we moved here into our facility, we thought, we'll continue to do it. And we have continued for the last 10 years or more, actually 15 years, actually, boy, time flies.
Wow.
And slowly it has built over the years. So now it's an event. It's kind of like a carnival. We get over 2,000 people out. And
Wow.
the neat thing about it is when you have an event that builds over the years, we used to pay 90% of the budget of the event came out of our pockets. But as an event builds, you get people who want to sponsor things more and more. And so now it's completely changed. 90% of the cost of the event is sponsored by vendors and things like that.
Wow.
And so it has become a real fun event, and people come out every year. Matter of fact, this year it was kind of funny. I became part of our Facebook community. So our community, I live in the community of Royal Oak, or Rocky Ridge, which is just across from our church, and they have a Facebook page, and so they're always talking about community stuff. And everything from I lost my dog to, I found a bike. But this year I went on it and I saw people saying, hey, I heard that they're having this Family Fun Day event. That church, some people said, I heard that church down the road is having this Family Fun Day thing. Has anybody ever been to it? And then just the dialogue on the Facebook page was incredible. Yeah, I went. What's it like? Oh, it's awesome. Do they preach at you? No, it's not like that at all. It's great for the kids. And so the dialogue was going on Facebook, and I was watching it. This was about a week before the event this year. So it's kind of funny.
That's cool. That's really cool. So, I mean, you have bouncy castles, you have a barbecue, you do a whole bunch of stuff. You have games inside the facility as well as in the parking lot all around?
Inside, outside, a petting zoo, and and it's free, although, there's a small fee for the food, just a small amount. People buy tickets, and but everything else is free, and it's very well attended. So we get the community, we do it in conjunction with the community association.
Yeah.
So what they like to do what they would call community events, inclusive events, as many times as they can. They've seen that our event has been very successful, so we do it in conjunction with them.
That's really cool. That's awesome. You had talked about, growing up and when you got born again, you were born again into a charismatic church, and you've been pastoring charismatic churches. But I remember years ago, you shifted your focus and style of ministry to more of outsider, seeker sensitive type church and type ministry. So talk to us about that shift in you and in philosophy and in your church, and how you've pastored, and why you felt strongly to go that way.
Yeah, so we had to ask the hard questions. Does our culture and behavior on the inside of the church, it doesn't really harmonize with our sign that says everyone welcome? Mm. And we came to the conclusion that in some ways it didn't. And so that comes down to how long our services are. How long your worship time is.
Right.
To how we preach our messages and what we preach. So we grappled with all of that, and it took quite a while. It probably took over a year of just thinking and asking those questions and trying different things to where we finally decided, hey, we're going to go in this direction.
Wow. So how did you wrestle with the critics that would have been out there saying, okay, well, if we go this way, we're going to be compromising or limiting the Holy Spirit? Or how did you wrestle with all of that?
Yeah, well, we had lots of critics, and actually, when we began to actually preach the vision and implement it, we did have people leave. But I was sold on what I was doing, so
yeah.
I could see it clearly in Scripture. That we needed to reach the lost, and I don't know how reaching the lost grieves the Holy Spirit.
Yeah,
I mean, that is the mission of the Holy Spirit.
It is. It's so true.
Yeah, and Jesus said, "I came to seek and save that which was that lost." So
yeah.
So we held our ground, and at first it was challenging for sure.
Yeah,
we had lots of critics. Quite a few departures, But the interesting thing is we, as people were leaving, we also saw people were coming.
Yeah.
So we fruit.
Immediately, you started seeing fruit immediately.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
That is awesome. And then, I mean, that was kind of a turning point for the church too. I mean, it began to grow at a different rate as well. So what's been your most effective strategy as a church for winning souls?
Well, that's a great question, because the whole topic of winning the lost is a huge one and a challenging one.
Yeah.
I met with a pastor yesterday who, was wondering, should I close my church, because
Wow.
they haven't seen new people come in months and months. And, I don't know. In some ways, I don't know what to say sometimes to pastors, but for us, I can share what's worked for us.
Mm.
We do invest in what we would call outreach events.
Yeah.
Oh, we were meeting in a coffee shop, and I told him, I said, look, if you were to, look at the plan of this coffee shop, right, the business plan, the owner would allot some money to staffing, some money to product, some money to keeping the lights on. But, the owner would also invest some money in advertising. A certain percentage of the budget is invested in advertising.
Yeah.
So if we look at that from a church perspective, we would call advertising outreach. And so we have to invest a certain amount of resource, and resource is time, money, effort into outreach.
Yes.
And so we've experimented over the years. We always, like we just talked about, we do a big outreach in June, our Family Fun Day.
Yeah.
We also, every winter, we do a winter barbecue, which, we started doing 5 years ago. It's right in the middle of February. Sometimes,
which is pretty brave in Calgary.
Yeah.
To do a barbecue.
Yeah, sometimes we can do it outside because the weather, we get a Chinook. Some other times we do it inside. But you know what? We always have fun. We have we get a horse-driven wagon. We do hay rides and games and things, and then we do other events. Smaller events. We have what we call a couples cafe. We do it twice a year, and other stuff like that. Christmas and Easter is a wonderful time to do outreach.
Yes.
And so what we like to do is we like to do something big on both those days. Those are the big days. And what we find works for us is, let's say, you have Easter is here. Easter Sunday is here. A lot of times what we'll do is we'll launch an outreach series. We call them outreach series.
Right.
The Sunday after Easter.
Ooh, that's good. That's really good.
So we'll get people in on Easter, because a lot of people like to go to church on Easter. But, the goal is to get them in after Easter. And so we will do a series of messages that will kind of connect with everyone.
Right. So you'll take a good a typical harvest time. Easter is a typical harvest time, and you'll maximize and you'll put your effort and dollars in a time when you're going to have more visitors than would be normal naturally anyway, and you'll just maximize that.
Right. And then we'll have a card sitting on the seat, and maybe a video, some multimedia, and we'll say, hey, we are beginning a brand new series on marriage, family, various topics that really touch everyone.
Right.
Next Sunday, we'd love you to come out.
Right.
And I've seen people come back, and they come for one, then they end up coming for the next, and before you know it, they've been in church 4 or 5 times, and then lo and behold, some of them give their hearts to the Lord.
That's cool. That's really cool. So how many salvations or baptisms did the church have last year?
Okay, so we don't count salvations, and I guess I'm a bit of a stickler with this.
Okay.
I went to an outreach this Christmas at another church. We were actually serving there.
Yeah.
Our church was serving it. It's kind of how shall I say? It's kind of a street ministry thing.
Yeah.
And the pastor, preached the salvation message, and he said, okay, all of you who want to give your hearts to Christ, I want you to lift your hands, and some did. And then he said, and those of you who lifted your hands, we have a special packet that we want to give you with some gifts inside. And so you really want to think about it. And if you want that, lift your hands. And so twice as many people lifted their hands. And then the next thing I hear is that the pastor is talking about how many got saved that night.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? To me, probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if they got saved. They certainly got their package with a gift in it. And so to me, I don't know. Everybody has to be comfortable with what they do. We don't count salvation. So if someone lifts their hands, they might have got saved, but they might not have gotten saved. But we do count baptism.
Okay.
And so last year we baptized about 35.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right. So tell me about somebody in the church who you baptized or that got saved in there, and how their life they came in maybe through an event, or they came in on a Sunday because of a marriage series that you're doing, and their life got changed. They got born again. Would typically not be a churchgoer. Tell me about somebody there.
Yeah. So we have a few stories like that. One of the most recent ones is we do an event called Couples Cafe.
Yeah.
We do it twice a year. It's on a Friday night, and it's a real fun event. We have little cafe tables, and we do it in our sanctuary. And so although everyone's together, the couples are actually just with themselves because they're at a little cafe table. And so it's a really fun night. We give a little teaching. There's dialogue that takes place. In other words, we have questions that the couples ask each other that fit with maybe our 20-minute long teaching that we give. And then there's raffles and stuff. So anyway, I met a guy there this last time who was very standoffish. He didn't want to talk to me. It was his first time in church. And so I noticed that he had come with a couple who are from our church. So I asked them, I said, who's that? And they said, oh, those are our friends. And we brought them tonight. But just to let you know, that guy, he's an atheist. And he wants nothing to do with God. And I said, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. That's why he doesn't really want to talk to me, the pastor.
Yeah.
And so anyway, he was there that night. And then about 2 Sundays later, lo and behold, who's sitting in church but this guy?
Wow.
And so I was surprised, but I kept watching. And so he came once a month. And then next thing you know, he's coming twice a month. And then next thing you know, he's coming every Sunday.
Wow.
Well, about 3 Sundays ago, I gave an altar call. Like we do ask people to lift their hands if they want to receive Christ. I do that quite often. He lifts his hand. And I thought, wow, that's kind of neat. Next thing you know, I find out he's in our baptism class because we're doing a baptism. A few weeks later, he gets baptized at our church picnic.
Wow.
Just this Friday night, we did a men's barbecue, and he was there. And so I had an opportunity to talk to him, and I said, hey, that was awesome that you got baptized. And he said, yeah, he says, this has been just a whirlwind for me. So he shared a little bit about what happened, about how he was an atheist, not a hard, fast atheist, but God just started revealing himself to the guy and showing up, and he would ask questions and God would somehow, answer. And he has really given his heart to the Lord. It's really neat to see. So even on Sunday, and I get quite excited when I talk about these individual stories because I looked over at him because the funny thing is the people who brought him to the church, they're in the habit of sitting right at the front.
Yeah.
So of course, he just sit with them.
Yeah.
And even when they're not there, you know how it is. They just get used to sitting there. And he's sitting with his wife right at the front. Both of them got saved. And he's closing his eyes, worshiping God.
Wow.
His pastor. Yeah.
That is awesome. That's why we do what we do. I mean, those stories right there just makes everything worthwhile, makes all the criticisms they receive and all the rest of it just makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah. Now, the interesting thing is he would have probably have never come to church on a Sunday.
Right.
But this couples cafe thing, kind of, it's a dessert night, right? And it kind of got his interest, and his wife wanted to come. And so that's one front door event that we do that maybe might bring someone in.
That's really cool. You've also had always had a very creative way of doing small groups, and you've gone through different ways of different methods of doing this. But tell us about some of the methods that you've used, and what's worked, what hasn't worked, and what you're doing now and why.
Okay, so we for years did the traditional small group model, and that's where you run your typical small groups. You have your small group leaders, and they meet every week. And hopefully, the vision is that everybody in the church will become part of a small group.
Right.
We did that for many years, but we found that they have a tendency to peter out. So a group that starts strong with maybe, 12 or 15, by the end of the year, there's 3 people coming.
Right.
The leaders are getting discouraged. The groups are getting stagnated. So quite a few years ago, now we decided we were going to change our model, and I read a book about what they call free market small groups. It's kind of a funny name, but basically his idea is that you offer small groups during terms.
Okay.
So a term would be a fall term, and then a spring term. And these groups are topic driven. And so and so we decided, we're going to embrace this model. And what you do is you have a variety of topic driven small groups.
Right.
So they would range from things like studying the Bible to, we've had small groups that have to do with cooking, to walking dogs, to hearing the voice of God, to budgeting, guitar lesson small groups, all different topics. And so you present these small groups on what it's called Rally Sunday.
Yeah.
And the small group leaders set up their table in the foyer, and it's sort of like a people go around and they see all the different small groups that are being offered that term.
Wow, cool. Like a trade show.
Yeah, like a trade show. That's the word I'm looking for. So now some small groups last for 6 weeks, some 8 weeks, some 12 weeks.
Yeah.
But then they end. So they have a specific beginning and a specific end. And what we do is we print a catalog with the small groups in them, saying exactly what they're about, who's leading them, when they meet, what time they meet, where they meet, and the beginning and the end. So it starts on this time, it ends on this date. And so people know exactly what they're signing up for.
That's really cool. That's good. And so with the small, like the shorter small groups, and with the different variety of small groups in those different terms, so you're not getting a small group that's sticking together necessarily through multiple terms. They'll do one term and then maybe they'll take another interest.
Right. So what happens is that most of the small groups meet and then they end.
Right.
They disband. Some say, man, we've had such an awesome time being together. Let's just stay together. We'll do another topic.
Okay.
So some do morph into what we call continuous small groups.
Yeah.
And we always encourage that because, and I don't want to take too much time talking about it, but there are pros and cons to every model. The advantage of term groups like we do is that new people tend to join them more quickly.
Right, okay.
Because they look at the catalog and they say, hey, this is on a topic of hearing the voice of God or how to budget or how to do your taxes. It starts on this date, it ends on that date. I'm not locked in forever, and they do sign up.
Right.
That's one of the advantages. One of the disadvantages of that model is the community aspect. In other words, connecting at deeper levels.
Yeah.
might be hindered because it begins and ends.
Right. Do you find that people network more, or have create more relationships? Like, what has it done relationally within the church when you have term groups like that?
Well, certainly people say, this was a positive experience. I really liked it. And so the next time we offer small groups, they are more apt to sign up.
Right.
Now, as far as them, developing deep prayer partners and things like that and accountability things, that's probably the weakness of the model.
Right.
And so that's why any that's like to continue or become a continuous group, we always encourage that.
Right. That makes sense. That's very interesting. That's good.
So in our church, we have two types of small groups. One is continuous. They just meet through the year together.
Yeah.
And we have term groups that start up in the fall and the spring, and then they have a beginning and an end.
That's really cool. That's very, very cool. All right. So you also have a very multicultural church. You've got, I don't know what, I think what you said, you told me once you got 60% of your church, I think is African in some way. So talk to us about the benefits. You got Filipinos, you've got a wide variety of that. So talk to us about the benefits of being a multicultural church and maybe some of the challenges that causes. And in particular, how does that affect your ability to win souls?
Yeah. So for whatever reason, our church has over the years developed very much in that way. It hasn't been by plan. It's not like we sat down and said, we want a multicultural church. What should we do to make it happen? The church just grew that way.
Yeah.
So much so now that I guess you might say that white Canadians are a minority in our church.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think some of the advantages to that is I think it's appealing. We have over probably 38 nations represented in our church.
Wow.
I think it's appealing in that it does kind of fit with what even Canada is all about.
Yeah, that's true.
And just the multicultural emphasis that our nation likes to. It's a value our nation embraces. Another thing, I think it's theologically accurate. I believe that the church, whenever you look at it in Scripture, is every kindred, nation, tongue. So, I think there's some beauty in that.
Yes.
I've often preached that the church, like if you look for a type of church, there's types in the Bible. If you look at a type in the Old Testament of the church, one type in the Old Testament is Joseph's coat. Right? I see that as the church. Joseph's coat of many colors. To me, Joseph is a type of Christ. His coat is a type for the church. So I've always had a passion for seeing the church being multicultural. And not that we've planned it that way, but it has been an inner passion for me.
Yeah.
And over the years, our church has become.
That's very cool.
I think is attractive, but of course it does come with its challenges.
Yeah.
So one of the challenges could be, like if you were a white Canadian, you came to our church, you might look around and say, wow, I'm not the majority here. So, that might be a challenge for some people. Of course, some people might find that quite attractive.
Yeah.
I think some of the challenges of pastoring a multicultural church, has to do with what we would call silos.
Right.
That develop. And that would mean that the Nigerians hang out with the Nigerians. And
right.
The Ghanese hang out with the people from Ghana. The Filipinos hang out with the Filipinos.
Right.
We're always having to challenge that.
Wow.
So that can be a weakness.
So you challenge that. You challenge that with preaching. With, I mean, and again, that would come back to your term small groups. I mean, you can encourage mixing and mingling with all different kind of backgrounds in those as well.
Yeah, and so I do preach on it. When I talk about because one of our values. So we have 5 values in our church.
Yeah.
One of our values is embracing all cultures. So for us, that is a value. And whenever I preach our values, and when I preach on that value, I talk also about the weaknesses within the values.
Right.
And that we don't want to be just cloistering ourselves in cliques. And so I challenge the people not to do that.
That's really good.
Now, another challenge with a multicultural church is just the pastoral care stuff. Can be a little more challenging. So how you pastor people from different cultures, takes a little bit more foresight.
Right, because they have different expectations, they have different methodologies, that would be interesting.
Yeah, so for instance, we have a marriage ministry here in our church. We have a counseling ministry that my wife heads up. But some cultures, they're far more private.
Right.
So for them to even pick up the phone or send an email to say I'm having marital problems is culturally inappropriate.
Right.
So they would rather sit alone and suffer than reach out for help, because for them it's not a positive thing culturally for them to do.
Interesting. Wow. Yeah. Wow. Well, that's really cool, man. This has been so good, and thank you so much for doing this and taking the time to do this with us. Is there anything that I should have asked but didn't?
No, I think we covered all of it. I am, like you, concerned about the state of the evangelical church.
Yeah.
I meet with a lot of pastors, and I think there is a level of discouragement. And so, but I do believe that, we're in an hour. Sure, the things might be getting a little darker, but it gives us more of an opportunity to shine a little brighter.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I do think God has a plan for the church in this hour.
Yes.
It's a good plan.
Yeah, that's so good. And I've been sensing too, I don't know if you have or not, but sensing a real urgency of the times, and an urgency. That's why we're starting this podcast is, or started that we're an urgency to awaken the sleeping giant that is the church to soul winning and to constantly reaching into our communities. And so, man, you guys are doing it. We're excited about that. Thank you for your time. If there's pastors that are listening, they want to connect with you, have questions, would like to dig a little deeper, how can our listeners connect with you online?
Well, I mean, our website, certainly Royal Oak Victory Church, rovc.ca.
Yeah.
And then, of course, our Facebook page. And any pastor who wants to email me personally, my email address is Dave, D-A-V-E, at rovc.ca.
Perfect.
So, yeah, that'd be awesome.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time again. This has been very good. And man, it's been great to have you on.
Yeah, well, thank you for the opportunity, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
What a great conversation with Pastor Dave Meyers of Royal Oak Victory Church. So much in there. He touched on a lot of different topics, but really, really good. What was your big takeaway?
I think one of the biggest takeaways I had was everybody wants to put a sign out front that says everybody welcome, but not everybody has the culture to sustain that.
So
I think
good.
that really stood out, as well as the community engagement side, of course.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that, because I think every church has everyone welcome, and yet does our culture and our behavior match? That I heard a great definition of culture where it was, culture is defined by our talk with our behaviors. Yep. So talk plus behaviors equals culture. And I think if we just talk everyone welcome, but we don't behave like everyone is welcome, then we have some problems. So I think I read a book recently that said, everyone says they have the friendliest church, but is your church a place where they can make friends? And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
man, so good. So much good stuff in GoCast. Where can people connect with us?
Yeah, you can reach out to us on our social media platforms. We have a Spotify account, YouTube. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, and on our website.
Awesome. And you can also engage with us in social media, in conversations back and forth. We'd love to connect with you and your church. So you can join us on Facebook or on Instagram as well. Next week, we have a great conversation with Pastor Shanu from India. He's from Lucknow, India, the Assembly of Believers Church in Lucknow, India. Here's a little excerpt from our conversation.
Right. So we have strategized in such a way that we have a different strategy for the city churches and different strategy for the village churches, for the remote churches, the urban churches and the remote churches. So what we do is, for the city churches, we have our city Bible colleges where guys come from the city. And for the village, we have these village Bible colleges, and they come to that place. They live in that same surroundings, because once you take a remote guy into an urban place, he does not feel like going back.
Yeah.
That's a major problem, because he's comfortable now with the air cons, with the media, and with the bright things of the city. So we try and pick boys, ministers from the village, and train them into their own circumstances, and then send them back into the villages. They speak the same language. They understand the dialect. They are people from themselves, and then they can grow. So that has been one of the major win thing for us.
Wow.
And we stand with them, and God has been really good in blessing us, so that when we have these village ministries, we ask the people of the village to give us the land, and so that we can build. But none of them would give us the land to build the church. So we tell them, if you donate the land, we will have a free school here. So they're happy to, because a lot of villages in India do not have education.
Right.
So the literacy rate is really, really bad.
Wow.
And uneducation is one of the biggest problems right now in India.
Yeah.
So
wow.
literacy is a major problem. So anybody is happy to donate their land for free school. And we tell them, if you give us the land, we will get the free school going, and we will dig a well so that you can have clean water, because that's the second major health issue that's the people in the villages do suffer with.
Can't wait for next week and our conversation with Pastor Shanu. He oversees, thousands of churches and tons of ministries in India, making a big impact and leading soul-winning movement. You're not going to want to miss that conversation. Thanks again for joining us at GoCast, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of GoCast. We hope you feel inspired and better equipped to take your community for Christ. Make sure to subscribe to receive each new episode as it's released. Let's go and break the stat together.